is that? God, I think they're dead.
What's that?
Did anyone see that?
Somebody's
murdered.
I can't believe it.
Something went that way.
And according to Scotland Yard, the crime took place at 24 Culver Street, Paddington. The murdered woman was a Mrs. Maureen Lyon. In connection with the murder, the police are anxious to interview a man seen in the vicinity, wearing a dark overcoat, light scarf, and a soft felt hat. Motorists are warned against icebound roads. The heavy snow is expected to continue, and throughout the country there will be a certain freezing, particularly at points on the north and northeast coast of Scotland.
Mrs. Barlow? Mrs. Barlow? It's cold. Really does look nice. Oh, how stupid of Giles. Gosh!
Molly! Molly! Molly, where are you?
Doing all the work, you brute.
Oh, there you are. Leave it all to me. Shall I stoke the Yaga?
Done.
Hello, sweetheart. Your nose is cold.
I've just come in.
Why? Where have you been? Surely you've not been out in this weather.
I had to go down to the village for some stuff I'd forgotten. Did you get the chicken netting?
It wasn't the right kind, and I went on to another dump, but that wasn't any good either. Practically a whole day wasted. My God, I'm half frozen. Car was skidding like anything. The snow's coming down thick. Would you bet we're not snowed up tomorrow?
Oh dear, I do hope not. If only the pipes don't freeze.
We'll have to keep the central heating well stoked up. Not too good. I wish they sent the coke along. We've not got any too much.
Oh, I do so want everything to go well at first. First impressions are so important.
Is everything ready? Nobody has arrived yet, I suppose.
No, thank goodness. I think everything's in order. Mrs. Barlow's hooked it early. Afraid of the weather, I suppose.
What a nuisance these daily women are. That leaves everything on your shoulders.
And yours. It's the partnership.
So long as you don't ask me to cook.
No, that's my department. Anyway, we've got lots of tins in case we are snowed up. Oh, Giles, do you think it's going to be all right?
Got cold feet, have you? Are you sorry now that we didn't sell the place when your aunt left it to you instead of having this mad idea of running it as a guest house?
No, I'm not. I love it. And talking of a guest house, just look at that.
Pretty good, eh?
It's a disaster. Don't you see? You've left out the S. Monkwell instead of Monkswell.
Good Lord, so I did. However did I come to do that? But it doesn't matter, does it? Monkwell is just as good a name.
You're in disgrace. Go and stoke up the central heating.
Cross that icy yard. Shall I bank it up for the night now?
No, you don't do that until 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
How appalling.
Hurry up. Someone may arrive at any minute now.
Have you got all the rooms worked out?
Yes. Mrs. Boyle, front four-poster room. Major Metcalf, blue room. Mr. Casewell, east room. Mr. Wren, oak room.
I wonder what all these people will be like. Aren't we to have got rent in advance?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
We're rather mugs at this game.
They bring luggage. If they don't pay, we hang on to their luggage. It's quite simple.
I can't help thinking that we ought to have taken a correspondence course in hotel keeping We're sure to get had in some way. Their luggage might just be bricks wrapped up in newspaper, and where should we be then?
They all wrote from very good addresses.
That's what servants with forged references do. Some of these people might be criminals hiding from the police.
I don't care what they are, so long as they pay us 7 guineas every week.
You're such a wonderful woman of business, Molly.
And according to Scotland Yard, the crime took place at 24 Culver Street, Paddington. The murdered woman was a Mrs. Maureen Lyon. In connection with the murder, the police are anxious to interview a man seen in the vicinity wearing a dark overcoat, light scarf, and a soft felt hat. Motorists are warned against icebound roads. The heavy snow is expected to continue, and throughout the country,
How do you do?
Thanks so much. Weather is simply awful. My taxi gave up at your gate. Wouldn't attempt to drive. No sporting instinct. Are you Mrs. Ralston? How delightful. My name is Wren.
How do you do, Mr. Wren?
You know, you're not at all as I pictured you. I've been thinking of you as a retired general's widow, Indian Army. I thought you'd be terrifically grim and snobbish, that the whole place would be simply crammed with Benares bras. Instead, it's heavenly, quite heavenly, lovely proportions. Oh, that's a fake. But this table is genuine. Oh, I'm simply going to love this place. Have you got any wax flowers or birds of paradise?
I'm afraid not.
Oh, what a pity. Well, what about a sideboard? A purple, plummy, mahogany sideboard with great solid carved fruits on it?
Yes, we have, in the dining room.
Oh, in there, I must see it.
Please, Mr. Wren, I wasn't quite ready to show
Oh,
you.
wonderful. Where do I go?
Stairs?
Yes. Oh, yes, I see. This is one.
Do come and warm yourself.
Oh, absolutely perfect. Real bedrock respectability. Why do away with the centre mahogany table? Little tables just spoil the effect.
We thought guests would prefer them. This is my husband.
How do you do? Terrible weather, isn't it? Takes one back to Dickens and Scrooge and an irritating Tiny Tim. So bogus. Of course, Mrs. Ralston, you're absolutely right about the little tables. I was getting carried away by my feeling for period. If you had a mahogany dining table, you'd have to have the right family round it. Stern, handsome father with a beard, prolific, faded mother, 11 children of assorted ages, a grim governess, and somebody called Poor Harriet, the poor relation who acts as General Dog's body and is very, very grateful for being given a good home.
I'll take your suit upstairs for you. Oh, did you say?
Yes.
Oh, I do hope it's got a four-poster with little chintz roses.
It hasn't.
I don't believe your husband's going to like me. How long have you been married? Are you very much in love?
We've been married just a year. Perhaps you'd like to go up and see your room.
Ticked off? But I do so like knowing all about people. I mean, I think people are so madly interesting, don't you?
Well, I suppose some are and some are not.
No, I don't agree. I think they're all interesting because you never really know what anyone is like or what they're really thinking. For instance, you don't know what I'm thinking about now, do you?
Not in the least. Cigarette?
No, thanks. You see? The only people who really know what other people are like are artists, and they don't know why they know it. But if they're portrait painters, it comes out on the canvas.
Are you a painter?
No, I'm an architect. My parents, baptized me Christopher in the hope that I'd be an architect. Christopher Wren, as good as halfway home. Actually, of course, everybody laughs about it and makes jokes about St. Paul's. However, who knows? I may yet have the last laugh. Chris Wren's prefab nests may yet go down in history. I'm going to like it here. I find your wife most sympathetic.
Indeed.
And really very beautiful.
Don't be absurd.
There, isn't that like an English woman? Compliments always embarrass them. European women take compliments as a matter of course, but English women have all the feminine spirit crushed out of them by their husbands. There's something very boorish about English husbands.
Come up and see your room.
Shall I?
Could you stick up the hot water boiler?
Where do I go?
Please.
Thank you.
Coming!
is Monkswell Manor, I presume.
Yes,
I am Mrs. Boyle.
I'm Giles Ralston, coming to the fire, Mrs. Boyle, and get warm. Awful weather, isn't it? Is this your only luggage?
A Major Metcalf is seeing to it.
I'll leave the door for him.
The taxi wouldn't risk coming up the drive. It stopped at the gate. We had to share a taxi from the station, and there was great difficulty in getting that. Nothing ordered to meet us, it seems.
I'm very sorry, Mrs. Boyle. We didn't know what train you will be coming by, of course. Otherwise, you see, of course, would have seen as somebody was standing by.
All trains should have been met.
Let me take it out. My wife will be here in a moment. I'll just go along and give Metcalf a hand with the bags.
The drive might at least have been cleared of snow. Most offhand and casual, I must say.
I'm so sorry. I was just upstairs getting a
Mrs. Ralston?
Yes, I'm Mrs. Ralston.
You're very young.
Young.
To be running an establishment of this kind, you can't have had much experience.
There has to be a beginning for everything, hasn't there?
I see. Quite inexperienced. And old house. I hope you haven't got dry rot.
Certainly not.
A lot of people don't know they've got dry rot until it's too late to do anything about it.
The house is in perfect condition.
Could do with a coat of paint. You know, you've got worm in this oak.
This way, Major.
Oh, what a lovely home. Must be most comfortable here.
My wife.
Ah, how do you do? Awful blizzard outside. One time we thought we shouldn't make it at all. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Yes, I should say if it carries on like this, you'll have 5 or 6 feet of snow by morning. Haven't seen anything like it since I was on leave in 1940.
I will take these up. What rooms did you say? Blue room and the rose room?
No, I put Mr. Wren in the rose room. He liked the 4 posters so much. So it's Mrs. Boyle in the oak room and Major Metcalf in the blue room.
Major.
Sir? Ah, let me help you there. Thank you. Show the way.
Do you have much servant difficulty here?
We have quite a good local woman who comes in from the village.
And what indoor staff?
No indoor staff, just us.
Indeed. I understood this was a guest house in full running order.
We're only just starting.
I would have said that a proper staff of servants would be essential before opening an establishment of this kind. I consider your advertisement. May I ask if I am the only guest here? Along with Major Metcalf, that is.
Oh, no, there are several here.
This weather, too. A blizzard. No less. All very unfortunate.
But we couldn't very well foresee the weather.
The north wind doth blow, and it will bring snow, and what will the robin do then, poor thing? Oh, I adore nursery rhymes. They're always so tragic and macabre. That's why children like them.
May I introduce Mr. Wren, Mrs. Boyle.
Madam,
How do you do?
this is a very beautiful house, don't you think so?
I've come to the time of life when the amenities of an establishment are more important than its appearance. If I had not known this was a running concern, I should never have come here. I understand it was fully equipped with every home comfort.
There is no obligation for you to remain here, Mrs. Boyle, if you're not satisfied.
No, indeed, I should not think of doing so.
If there has been any misapprehension, perhaps it would be better if you went elsewhere. I can ring up for the taxi to return. The roads are not yet blocked. We've had so many applications for rooms that we shall be able to fill your place quite easily. In any case, we're raising our terms next month.
I'm certainly not going to leave until I've tried what the place is like. You needn't think you can turn me out now. Perhaps you would see me up to my bedroom, Mrs. Ralston.
Certainly, Mrs. Boyle. Darling, you are wonderful.
Mrs. Ralston!
Where do we go? Please, just after me.
I think that's a perfectly horrible woman. I don't like her at all. I'd love for you to turn her out into the snow. Serve her right.
Oh, that's a pleasure I must forego, I'm afraid. You'll order this another of them. Come in.
Oh, I'm afraid my car's bogged about a half-mile down the road. I ran into a drift.
Well, let me take this.
Thank you.
Any more stuff in the car?
Oh, no, I travel light. Oh, I am glad to see you've got yourself a good fire.
Mr. Wren, Miss...
Casewell.
My wife will be here in a moment.
Oh, no hurry. I've got to get myself thawed out. Looks as though you're going to be snowed in up here. Weather forecast is saying motorists warned, heavy falls expected, etc. Hope you've got plenty of provisions in.
Oh, yes, my wife's an excellent manager. Anyway, we can always eat our hens.
Before we start eating each other, eh?
Any news in the paper? Apart from the weather.
Usual political crisis. Oh yes, and a rather juicy murder.
A murder? I like murder.
They seem to think it was some sort of homicidal maniac strangled a woman near Paddington. A sex maniac, I suppose.
Doesn't say much, does it? The police are anxious to interview a man seen in the vicinity of Culver Street at the time, wearing darkish overcoat, lightish scarf, and soft felt hat. Police messages to this effect have been broadcast throughout the day.
Useful description. Fit pretty well anyone, wouldn't it?
When it says that the police are anxious to interview someone, is that a polite way of hinting that he's the murderer?
Could be.
Who was this woman who was murdered?
Mrs. Lyon. Mrs. Maureen Lyon.
Young or old?
Doesn't say. Doesn't seem to have been robbery.
Well, I told you, sex maniac.
Miss Casewell, Molly, my wife.
Oh, how'd you do?
It's an awful night. Would you like to come up to your room? The water's hot if you'd like a bath.
Oh, you're right, I would.
Just this way. Yes, absolutely. I didn't think they would make it.
Yes. Oh, look at this. It's wonderful. Yes. Soft. Oh, and what's in here? What's in here? Oh, wonderful. In your room. It keeps going. I've try this out. Look at yes.
I must hurry out to the kitchen and get on with things. Major Metcalf's very nice. He won't be difficult. So Mrs. Boyle really frightens me. We must have a nice dinner. I was thinking of opening 2 tins of minced beef and cereal, and a tin of peas, and mashing the potatoes, and those stewed figs and custard. Do you think that will be all right?
Yes, I should think so. Perhaps not very original. Perhaps...
Do let me help. I adore cooking. Why not? An omelette. You've got eggs, haven't you?
Oh, yes. We've got plenty of eggs. We keep lots of fowl. They don't lay as well as they should, but we've put down a lot of eggs.
Oh, and if you've got a bottle of cheap, any type wine, you could add it to the minced beef and cereals, did you say? Give it a continental flavour. Show me where the kitchen is and what you've got, and I dare say I shall have an inspiration.
Come on.
All right. I'll follow you.
Never quite met a man who'd like to cook some.
Yes, no, just leave me alone.
Isn't he sweet? He's put on an apron, he's getting all the things together. He says, leave it to him and don't come back for half an hour. If our guests want to do the cooking themselves, it will save a lot of trouble.
Why on earth did you give him the best room?
I told you. He liked the 4-poster.
He liked a pretty 4-poster. Twerp.
Giles.
I've got no use for that kind. You didn't handle his suitcase, I did.
Had it got bricks in it?
It was no way. If you ask me, there's nothing inside it. He's probably one of those young men who go about bilking hotel keepers.
I don't believe it. I like him. I think Miss Casewell's rather peculiar, don't you?
Terrible female, if she is a female.
Seems very hard that all our guests should be either unpleasant or odd. Anyway, I think Major Metcalf's all right, don't you?
Probably drinks.
Oh, do you think so?
No, I don't. I was just feeling rather depressed. At any rate, they've all arrived. We've seen the worst now.
Who can that be?
Probably the Culver Street murderer.
Don't.
Oh,
1,000 pardons. I am, where am I?
well, this is Monkswell Manor guest house.
Oh, but what stupendous good fortune. Madam. What an answer to prayer. A guest house and a charming hostess. My Rolls Royce has run into a snowdrift. Blinding snow everywhere. I do not know where I am. Perhaps I think to myself, I shall freeze to death. And then I take a little bag. I stagger through the snow. I see before me big iron gates. A habitation, I am saved. Twice I fall into the snow as I come up your drive, but at last I arrive and immediately despair turns to joy. You let me have a room, yes?
Yes.
It's a rather small one, I'm afraid.
Naturally, you have other guests.
We've only just opened this place as a guest house today, and so we're rather new at it.
Charming.
But what about your luggage?
That is of no consequence. I have locked the car securely.
Wouldn't it be better to get it in?
No. I can assure you, on a night such as this, there will be no thieves abroad. And for me, my wants are very simple. I have all that I need here, in this little bag. Yes, all that I need.
You better get thoroughly warm. I'll see about your room. I'm afraid it's rather a cold room because it faces north, but all the others are occupied.
You have, several guests, then?
There's Major Metcalf and Mrs. Boyle and Miss Casewell and a young man called Christopher Wren and now you.
Yes, the unexpected guest. The guest you did not invite. The guest who just arrives from nowhere out of the storm. Sounds quite dramatic, does it not? Where do I come from? You do not know. Who am I? You do not know. Me, I am the man of a mystery. But now I tell you this. I complete the picture. From now on, there will be no more arrivals and no departures either. By tomorrow, perhaps even already, we are cut off from civilization. No butcher, no baker, no milkman, no postman, no daily papers, nobody or nothing but ourselves. That is admirable. Admirable. My name, by the way, is Paravicini.
Oh, yes. Oz Woolston.
Mr. and Mrs. Ralston. And this is Monkswell Manor Guest House, you say, huh? Monkswell Manor Guest House. Perfect. Perfect.
Well, Mr. Paravicini, let me show you your room.
Ciao.
Paravicini.
It's this way.
Told you, it's a small room.
It's up.
I consider it most dishonest not to have told me they were only just starting this place.
Everything's got to have a beginning, you know. Excellent breakfast this morning. Hot coffee, scrambled eggs, homemade marmalade, all nicely served too. Little woman does it all herself, you know.
Amateurs. There should be a proper staff.
Excellent lunch too.
Corned beef.
Yes, but very well disguised corned beef. Red wine in it. Oh, Mrs. Ralston promised to make us a pie tonight.
These radiators are not really hot. I shall speak about it.
Very comfortable beds too. Oh, at least mine was. I hope yours was too.
It was quite adequate. Really, I don't see why the best bedroom should be given to that very peculiar young man.
Oh, we got here ahead of us, don't you know? First come, first served and all that.
From the advertisement, I got quite a different impression of what this place would be like. A comfortable writing room and a much larger place altogether, with bridge and other amenities.
Regular old Tabby's delight.
I beg your pardon.
I mean, yes, I quite see what you mean.
No, indeed. I shan't stay here long.
No, I don't suppose you will.
Really, that is a very peculiar young man. Unbalanced mentally, I shouldn't wonder.
Escaped from a lunatic asylum.
I shouldn't be at all surprised.
Giles,
Yes,
could you shovel the snow away again from the back door?
coming.
I'll give you a hand, what? Good exercise. Must have exercise. Now, show me where these shovels are.
Sorry.
That's all right. Really, what an incredible young woman. Doesn't she know anything about housework? Carrying a carpet sweeper through the front hall. Are there any back stairs?
Oh, yes, very nice backstairs. Convenient if there was a fire.
Then why not use them? Anyway, all the housework should be done in the morning, before lunch.
I gather our hostess had to cook the lunch.
All very haphazard and amateurish. There should be a proper staff.
Oh, not very easy to get nowadays, is it?
No, indeed. The lower classes seem to have no idea of their responsibilities.
Poor old lower classes. Got the bit between their teeth, haven't they?
I gather you are a socialist?
I wouldn't say that. I'm not a red, just pale pink. But you see, I take no interest in politics. I live abroad.
I suppose conditions are much easier abroad.
Well, they don't have to cook and clean, as I gather most people in this country have to do.
This country has gone sadly downhill. Not what it used to be. I sold my house last year. Everything was too difficult.
Oh, hotels and guest houses are easier.
They certainly solve some of one's problems. Are you over in England for long?
Depends. I've got some business to see to. When it's done, I shall go back.
To France?
No.
Italy?
No.
mind not having that on quite so loud? I always find the radio to be rather distracting when one is trying to write letters.
How do you?
If you don't particularly want to listen just now.
But it's my favourite music, and there is a writing table in there.
I know, but it's much warmer in here.
Much warmer, I agree. Oh, bloody old ditch.
Mother, wherever I go, that woman seems to hunt me down. And then she glares at me. Positively glares.
Turn it down a bit.
Is that all right?
Oh yes, it served its purpose.
What purpose?
Tactics, boy.
Oh, you mean her?
She pinched the best chair. I've got it now.
You drove her out? I'm glad. I'm very glad. I don't like her a bit. Let's think of things we can do to annoy her, shall we? I wish she'd go away from here.
In this, not a hope.
When the snow melts?
Oh yes, when the snow melts, lots of things may have happened.
Yes, that's true. Snow's rather lovely, isn't it? So peaceful and pure. It makes one forget things.
It doesn't make me forget.
How fierce you sound.
I was thinking.
Sort of thinking.
Ice on a bedroom jug, chill blades raw and bleeding, one thin, ragged blanket, child shivering with cold and fear.
My dear, it sounds too grim. What is it? A novel?
But you didn't know I was a writer, did you?
Are you?
Sorry to disappoint you, I'm not.
Yes. This is Monkswell Manor Guest House. What? No, I'm afraid Mr. Ralston can't come to the telephone just now. This is Mrs. Ralston speaking. Who? The Berkshire Police. Oh, yes. Yes, Superintendent Hogben. I'm afraid that's impossible. He'd never get here. We're snowed up. Completely snowed up. The roads are impassable. Nothing can get through. Yes, very well, but what... Hello?
Molly!
Hello?
Molly, do you know where there's another spale?
Giles, the police have just rung up.
Trouble with the police, eh? Serving liquor without a license?
They said they're sending an inspector or a sergeant or something.
But he would never get here.
That's what I told them, but he seemed quite confident that he would.
Nonsense. Even the jeep couldn't get through in this. Anyway, what's it all about?
That's what I asked, but he wouldn't say, just said I was to impress on my husband to listen very carefully to what Sergeant Trotter, I think it was, had to say and to follow his instructions implicitly. Isn't it extraordinary?
What on earth do you think we've done?
Do you think it's those nylons from Gibraltar?
I did remember to get the wireless license, didn't I?
Yes, it's in the kitchen dresser.
Oh, I had a rather near shave with the car the other day, but it was entirely the other fellow's fault.
You must have done something.
Probably something to do with running this place. I expect we've ignored some Tim Pod regulation of some ministry or other. You practically can't avoid it nowadays.
Oh dear, I wish we never started this place. We're going to be snowed up for days and everyone is cross and we shall go through all our reserve of tins.
Oh, cheer up, darling. Everything's going all right at the moment. I've brought in the wood and stoked the yaga and done the hens, and I'll go and do the boiler next and chop some kindling. You know, Molly, come to think of it, it must be something pretty serious to send a sergeant trekking out in all this. It must be something really urgent.
Ah, there you are, Mr. Ralston. Do you know that the central heating in the library is practically stone cold?
I'm very sorry, Mrs. Boyle, but we're a bit short of coal.
I am paying 7 guineas a week here. 7 guineas, and I do not want to freeze.
I'll go and stoke it up.
Mrs. Ralston? If you don't mind my saying so, that is a very extraordinary young man you have staying here. His manners, and his ties, and does he ever brush his hair?
He's an extremely brilliant young architect.
I beg your pardon.
Christopher Wren is an architect.
My dear young woman, I have naturally heard of Sir Christopher Wren. Of course he was an architect. He built St. Paul's. You young people seem to think that no one is educated but yourselves.
I meant this Wren. His name is Christopher. His parents called him that because they'd hoped he'd be an architect. And he He is. Or nearly one. So it turned out all right.
Sounds a fishy story to me. I should make some inquiries about him if I were you. What do you know of him?
Just as much as I know about you, Mrs. Boyle, which is that you're both paying us 7 guineas a week. That is all I really need to know, isn't it? And all that concerns me. Doesn't matter to me whether I like my guests or whether I don't.
You are young and inexperienced, and you welcome advice from someone more knowledgeable than yourself. And what about this foreigner?
What about him?
You weren't expecting him, were you?
To turn away a bona fide traveller is against the law, Mrs. Boyle. You should know that.
Why do you say that?
Weren't you a magistrate? Sitting on the bench, Mrs. Boyle?
All I say is that this Baravicini, or whatever he calls himself, seems to me to have something...
Beware, dear lady! You talk of the devil, and here he is.
I didn't hear you come in.
I came in on a tiptoe, like this. Nobody ever hears me if I do not want them to. I find that very amusing.
Indeed.
Now, there was a young
Well,
lady...
I must be getting on with my letters. I'll see if it's much warmer in the drawing room.
My charming hostess looks upset. What is it, dear lady?
Everything is rather difficult this morning because of the snow.
Ah, yes. Snow makes things difficult, does it not? Or else it makes them easy. Yes, very easy.
Don't know what you mean.
No. There is quite a lot you do not know. I think, for one thing, you do not know very much about running a guest house.
I dare say we don't, but we mean to make a go of it.
Brava, brava.
I am not such a very bad cook.
You are, without a doubt, an enchanting cook. May I give you a little word of warning, Mrs. Ralston? You and your husband should not be too trusting, you know. Have you references with these guests of yours?
Is that usual? I always thought people just came.
It is advisable to know a little bit about the people who sleep under your roof. Take, for example, myself. I turn up saying my car is overturned in a snowdrift. What do you know of me? Nothing at all. I could be a thief, a robber, a fugitive from justice, a madman, even a murderer.
Oh.
You see? And perhaps you know as little of your other guests.
Well, as far as Mrs. Boyle goes, I'm pretty sure.
Drawing room is far too cold to sit in. I shall write my letters in here.
Allow me to stoke the fire for you.
Excuse me, Mrs. Ralston. Is your husband about? I'm afraid the pipes of the downstairs cloakroom are frozen.
Oh dear, what an awful day. First the police and then the pipes.
The police, did you say?
They rang up just now to say they're sending a sergeant out here, but I don't think he'll ever get here.
The ruddy coke's more than half stones and the prize. Hello, is anything the matter?
I hear the police are on the way here. Why?
Oh, don't worry. No one can get through in this. Why, the drifts must be 5 feet deep and the roads are all banked up. Nobody will get here today. Excuse me, Mr. Paravicini. May I put these down?
Are you Mr. Ralston?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, sir. Detective Sergeant Trotter, Berkshire Police. Can I get these skis off and stow them somewhere?
Yes, go round to that way, to the front door, and I'll meet you.
Thank you, sir.
I suppose that's what we pay a police force for nowadays, to go around enjoying themselves at winter sports.
Why have you sent for the police, Mrs. Ralston?
But I didn't.
Who's that man? Where did he come from? He passed a drawing room window on skis, all over snow and looking terribly hearty.
You may believe it or not, but that man is a policeman. A policeman skiing.
This is Detective Sergeant Trotter.
Good afternoon.
You can't be sergeant, you're too young.
I'm not quite as young as I look, madam. But terribly hearty.
We'll stow your skis away under the stairs. Is everything all right?
It's just quite cold outside, isn't it?
Excuse me, Mrs. Ralston. May I use your telephone?
Of course, Major Metcalf.
Thank you.
He's very attractive, isn't he? I always think that policemen are very attractive.
No brains. You can see that at a glance.
Hello? Hello? Mrs. Ralston, this telephone is dead, quite dead.
It was all right about half an hour ago.
Oh, the line's down with the snow, I suppose.
So we're quite cut off now. Quite cut off. Oh, that's funny, isn't it?
I don't see anything to laugh at.
No, indeed.
It's a private joke of my own. Oh, listen, the sleuth has returned.
Now, we can get to business. Mr. Ralston? Mrs. Ralston?
Do you want to see us along? If so, we can go into the library.
It's not necessary, sir. It'll save time if everyone's present. If I might sit at this table.
I beg your pardon.
Thank you.
Oh, do hurry up and tell us. What have we done?
Done. Oh, it's nothing of that kind, Mrs. Ralston. Something quite different. It's more a matter of police protection, if you understand me.
Police protection.
Relates to the death of Mrs. Lyon. Mrs. Maureen Lyon of 24 Culver Street, London, West 2, who was murdered yesterday, the 15th instant. You may have heard or read about the case?
Yes, I heard it on the wireless. The woman who was strangled.
That's right, madam. The first thing I want to know is if you were acquainted with this Mrs. Lyon.
Never heard of her.
Well, you might have known of her under the name of Lyon. Lyon wasn't her real name. She had a police record, and her fingerprints were on file. So we were able to identify her without difficulty. Her real name was Maureen Stanning. Her husband was a farmer, John Stanning, who resided at Longridge Farm, not very far from here.
Longridge Farm? Wasn't that where those children were?
Yes, the Longridge Farm case.
3 children.
That's right, miss. The Corrigans, 2 boys and a girl, brought before the court as in need of care and protection. A home was found for them, with Mr. and Mrs. Stanning at Longridge Farm. One of the children subsequently died as a result of criminal neglect and persistent ill treatment. The case made a bit of a sensation at the time.
It was horrible.
The Stannings were sentenced to terms of imprisonment. Stanning died in prison. Mrs. Stanning served her sentence and was duly released. Yesterday, as I say, she was found strangled at 24 Culver Street.
Who did it?
I'm coming to that, madam. A notebook was picked up near the scene of the crime. In that notebook was written 2 addresses. One was 24 Culver Street, and the other was Monkswell Manor.
What?
Yes, sir. That's why Superintendent Ogden, on receiving this information from Scotland Yard, thought it imperative that I come out here and find out if you know of any connection between this house, or anyone in this house, and the Longridge Farm case.
There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. It must be a coincidence.
Superintendent Ogden doesn't think it is a coincidence, sir. He'd have come himself if he'd been in any way possible, under the weather conditions, and as I can ski. He sent me with instructions to get full particulars on everyone in the house, to report back to him by phone, and to take any measures I see fit to ensure the safety of the household.
Safety? What danger does he think we're in? Oh, good Lord, he's not suggesting somebody's going to be killed here.
I don't want to frighten any of the ladies, but frankly, yes, that is the idea.
But why?
That's what I'm here to find out.
The whole thing's crazy.
Yes, sir, it's because it's crazy that it's dangerous.
Nonsense!
I must say it seems a bit far-fetched.
I think it's wonderful.
There's something that you haven't told us, Sergeant.
Yes, Mrs. Ralston. Below the 2 addresses was written 3 blind mice, and on the dead woman's body was a paper with "This is the first" written on it. And below the words was a drawing of 3 little mice and a bar of music. The music was the tune of the nursery rhyme, 3 blind mice. You know how it goes. 3 blind mice, 3 blind mice.
See how they run. They all ran after the farmers. Oh, it was horrible.
You said there were 3 children and 1 died.
Yes, the youngest, boy of 11.
What happened to the other 2?
The girl was adopted by someone and we haven't been able to trace her present whereabouts. The elder boy, be about 22, deserted from the army, hasn't been heard of since. According to the army psychologist, definitely a schizophrenic. It's a bit queer in the head, that's to say.
They think it was he who killed Mrs. Lyon, Mrs. Stanning,
Yes,
and that he's a homicidal maniac, and that he will turn up here and try to kill someone. But why?
well, that's what I've got to find out from you. As the superintendent sees it, there must be some connection. Now, you state, sir, that you've never had any connection with the Longridge Farm case?
No.
And the same goes for you, madam?
No. I mean, no connection.
What about servants?
We haven't got any servants. That reminds me. Would you mind, Sergeant Trotter, if I went to the kitchen? I'll be there if you want me.
That's quite all right, Mrs. Ralston. Now, can I have all your names, please?
This is quite ridiculous. We're merely staying in a sort of hotel. We've only arrived yesterday. We've nothing to do with the place.
You plan to come here in advance, though? You booked your rooms here ahead?
Well, yes. All except Mr.
My car overturned in a snowdrift.
I see. What I'm getting at is, anyone who's been following you around might know very well that you were coming here. Now, there's just one thing I want to know, and I want to know it quick. Which one of you is it that has some connection with that business at Longreach Farm? You're not being very sensible, you know. One of you is in danger, deadly danger. And I've got to know which one that is. All right, I'll ask you one by one. You first, since you seem to have arrived here more or less by accident, Mr. Perry...
Paravicini. But, my dear Inspector, I know nothing but nothing of these things that you are talking about. I am a stranger in this country. I know nothing of these local affairs of bygone years.
Mrs.
Boy, I don't see... Really, I find it quite an impertinence. Why now should I have anything to do with this distressing business?
Yes.
Casewell, Leslie Casewell. I've never heard of Longreach Farm and I know nothing about it.
You, sir.
Metcalf, Major. I read about the case in the papers at the time. I was stationed in Edinburgh then, no personal knowledge.
And you?
Christopher Wren. I was a mere child at the time. I don't remember even hearing about it.
And that's all you have to say? Any of you? Well, if one of you gets murdered, you'll have yourselves to blame. Now then, Mr. Ralston, can I have a look round the house? Thank you, sir.
Yes, how melodramatic. He's very attractive, isn't he? I am the police, so stern and hard-boiled. Quite a thrill, this whole business. 3 black mice. How did the tune go?
Really, Mr. Wren?
Don't you like it? But it's the signature tune! The signature of the murderer! Just fancy what a kick he must be getting out of it.
Melodramatic rubbish. I don't believe a word of it.
Just wait, Mrs. Boyle, till I creep up behind you and you feel my hands on your... Stop!
That's enough, Christopher. It's a poor joke. In fact, it's not a joke at all.
But it is! That's just what it is! A madman's joke! That's just what makes it so deliciously macabre! If you could just see your faces!
A singularly ill-mannered and neurotic young man.
Where's Giles?
Picking up policemen and making up a tour of the house.
Your friend, the architect, has been behaving in a most abnormal manner.
Well, young fellows get nervy nowadays. Dare say he'll grow out of it.
Nerves? I've no patience with people who say they have nerves. I haven't any nerves.
No? Well, that's just as well for you, Mrs. Boyle.
What do you mean?
I think you were actually one of the magistrates on the bench at the time. In fact, you were responsible for sending those 3 children to Longreach Farm.
Really, Major Metcalf, I can hardly be held responsible. We had reports from welfare workers. The farm people seemed very nice and were most anxious to have the children. It all seemed most satisfactory. Fresh milk and eggs and a healthy out-of-doors life.
Kicks and blows and starvation and a thoroughly vicious couple.
But how was I to know? They were most civilly spoken.
I was right. It was you.
One tries to do a public duty and all one gets is abuse.
Oh, you must forgive me, but indeed I find all this very amusing. I enjoy myself greatly.
Never did like that man.
Where did he come from last night?
I don't know.
Looks a bit of a spiv to me. Makes his face up to rouge and powder. It's disgusting. And he must be quite old too.
And yet he skips about as though he were quite young.
You'll be needing some more wood. I'll get it.
It's almost dark and yet it's only 4 in the afternoon. I'll turn the lights on. That's better.
Now, where did I leave my pen?
What a horrid little tune that is.
Don't you like it? Reminds you of your childhood, perhaps? An unhappy childhood?
I was very happy as a child.
You were lucky.
Weren't you happy?
No.
I'm sorry.
But that's all a long time ago. One gets over things.
I suppose so.
Or doesn't one? Damned hard to say.
They say what happened when you're a child matters more than anything else.
They say? Who says?
Psychologists?
Ah, all humbug. Just a damn load of nonsense. I've no use for psychologists or psychiatrists.
I've never really had much to do with them.
Well, it's a good thing for you that you haven't. It's a whole lot of hooey, the whole thing. Life is what you make of it. Look straight ahead, don't look back.
One can't always help looking back.
Nonsense. It's a question of willpower.
Perhaps.
I know.
I expect you're right, but sometimes things happen to make you remember.
Don't give in. Turn your back on them.
Is that really the right way? I wonder, perhaps that's all wrong. Perhaps one ought really to face them.
Depends what you're talking about.
Sometimes I hardly know what I am talking about.
Nothing from the past is going to affect me, except in the way that I want it to, okay?
Well, everything's all right upstairs. What's in here?
Would you mind shutting that door? This place is full of drafts.
Sorry, madam, but I've got to get the lay of the land.
Later, I tell you, later. Leave it. Just leave it.
What is all this, Molly?
That completes the tour. Nothing suspicious. Think I'll make my report now to Superintendent Ogman.
But you can't telephone. The line's dead.
What? Since when?
Major Metcalf tried it just after you arrived.
But it worked all right earlier. Superintendent Ogman got through all right.
Yes, I suppose since then the lines are down with the snow.
I wonder. It may have been cut.
Cut? But who could cut it?
Mr. Rawson, just how much do you know about all these people staying in your guest house?
We don't really know anything about them.
Ah.
Mrs. Boyle wrote from the Bournemouth Hotel, Major Metcalf from an address in, where was it?
Leamington.
Wren wrote from Hampstead, and a casewoman from a private hotel in Kensington. Paravicini, as we were told you, turned up out of the blue last night. But still, I suppose they've all got ration books, that sort of thing.
I shall go in all that, of course, but there's not much reliance to be placed on that sort of evidence.
But even if this maniac is trying to get here and kill us all, or one of us, we're quite safe now. Because of the snow. No one can get here till it melts.
Unless he's here already.
Here already?
Why not? All these people arrived here yesterday evening, some hours after the murder of Mrs. Stanning. Plenty of time to get here.
But except for Mr. Paravicini, they've all booked beforehand.
Oh, why not? These crimes were planned.
Crimes? There's only been one crime in Culver Street. Why are you so sure there will be another here?
That it will happen here? No. I hope to prevent that. That it will be attempted? Yes.
I can't believe it. It's so fantastic.
It isn't fantastic. It's just facts.
You have a description of what this man looked like in London?
Medium height, indeterminate build, darkish overcoat, soft felt out. Face hidden by a muffler, spoken a whisper. There are 3 darkish overcoats hanging up in the hall now. One of them's yours, Mr. Rawson. And there are 3 largest felt hats.
I still can't believe it.
Do you see? It's this telephone wire that worries me. If it's been cut...
I must go and get on with the vegetables.
Is there an extension?
I beg your pardon, did you say something?
Yes, Mr. Rawson. I said, is there an extension?
Oh yes, up in our bedroom.
Go up there and try it for me, will you?
Of course. Right.
Right. Bloody cold out here.
Now who's left the window open? Middle of winter too. I've said it all along. The young people running this place are amateurs.
Understand what I may term as the mechanics of fear. You have to study the precise effect produced on the human mind. Imagine, for instance, that you are alone in a room. It is late in the afternoon. A door opens softly behind you.
Oh, it's you. I can't find any program on the radio worth listening to. Here, what are you doing? Why did you turn out the light?
Why is it all dark?